What's going on, guys? It's Daniel from CoinSpots here. Hopefully, everyone's having a good Friday. TGIF, right? Last day of the work week. Pretty slow day in terms of price action and news, so honestly, I think today's going to be a pretty quick episode. So, I'm going to be updating everyone on my short that I took at this 4-hour SFP level that I posted up on Twitter. Super stoked about this trade. Closing these ads here. So right now, we seem to have formed a swing low at a really strange point, right? We're thinking that it was going to be going down to the 7,800 level, but we bounced at around like 79.20-ish. And obviously, that's not to say that this is the low, right? We're currently having some resistance at this previous swing low that I marked out here. This huge candle right here, we have a higher high to the left and a higher high to the right. Right here, swing low, and boom, boom. And currently we're at this 4-hour candle, seeing where that's going. But we've got some wicks already right above this level, so we could say short term right now on the 4-hour that this is providing some resistance here for Bitcoin. And that could definitely draw us back down or draw us down to the 7,800 level. However, what's interesting to note about this kind of random bounce in between the identified or the major, I guess you could say, support levels, right? Because everyone on Twitter, everyone on YouTube, wherever, right? Everyone was looking at this level, this 7,800 level, right? Because this is just, it's a point where your eye is drawn to, right? Boom, right here's the swing low. And typically, I've been seeing, just from being in the market and from trading, that especially in Bitcoin, the market makers don't let price go to those, major levels that everyone has their eye on, right? We see just random bounces at strange point. I shouldn't say strange, because this could be, or this is basically a swing low, this 79.20 level, right? Because if we zoom in here, we do have a higher high to the left and a higher high to the right. But it's not a swing low that pops out at you, right? That's why not a lot of people were even paying attention to that. And as I was saying that, market makers, they want to fool everybody, right? So that's why I've been seeing more and more bounces at just levels that no one is really paying attention to. And I think that's kind of an interesting trend that's going on, at least for Bitcoin, because that's where a lot of the big players are, simply the other altcoins, excluding Ethereum and maybe a couple other the large cap ones. They just don't have the liquidity for big money to be in, and also they don't have the ability to long and short. So it's honestly a little bit easier to trade them than it is to Bitcoin, right? Because we've been seeing SFP after SFP here on Bitcoin, which is getting pretty ridiculous. So I just think that's a interesting trend to keep in mind, to look for levels that, not necessarily everyone is paying attention to, right? If you see on Twitter this 7,800 level, for example, and I'm guilty of it too, right? And that's, as I said, I keep reiterating this theme of this podcast. It's basically to improve myself and improve you guys and kind of progress as we learn through this journey, So I think I'm going to try to pay attention more towards, swing low or swing high levels that no one is really talking about, because, it seems that we've been bouncing at those levels, previously. I'm not specifically talking about just this scenario, because as I said, this could just be providing resistance and we can drop down to the 7,800 level, right? Still in the trade, still totally plausible. I do also want to note that I did take some profits right here at the 0.5 fib. right there, 0.5 fib. So I got in around 8,300-ish. Took a little bit of profit at around the 8,200 level, and I'm currently still sitting in the trade, and I have moved my stop down a little bit just to cover myself. But other than that, I'm still pretty happy about my trade. It's still a pretty solid trade, up a couple percent. Now, for the long term, or little long term, next couple days, this pink box here I keep talking about, $7,500 to $7,600 level and this basically huge void that we have here to fill. That gets me not necessarily worried, as I'm currently in a short, but if these orders, like, we're either gonna bounce at this 7,800 level, or we're gonna bounce here at this 75, 7,600, maybe even 7,200 if you count this previous wick here. However, typically I favor more recent price action than previous price action. So there is the case for that because of this huge void that we have here. However, another thing to note, and I did mention this in a previous video, is that we do have this bullish divergence on the 4-hour. If you tick on the line chart, it's a little bit easier to see right here. So, right, we formed a low here, and the RSI, as you can see, is in the 20s. Yet we formed a lower low here, but the RSI has moved up, right? So that's a just textbook bullish divergence. So honestly, that gives the case for the bounce at the 7,800 level a little bit more certainty, I guess you could say. Also, from the retracement all the way at the low to the top here, that gives confluence with the 0.618 fib level. It's not exactly on the dot. It's, a couple, maybe $10, $20, $30 off, but it's close enough, you could say. So definitely there is a case to be made for a bounce at the 7,800 level. So that's kind of how Bitcoin's looking right now. Bearish short term, but we'll see how it goes. Moving on to Ethereum, checking out the Ethereum dollar chart. What looks like a standard head and shoulders here that's trying to form with the left shoulder right here, the head here, and then some kind of shoulder potentially forming over here. Not too sure. This is just a prediction being made, not taking a trade on Ethereum at all. Don't have any solid levels that price is interacting with yet. However, if this does form out, right, the head and shoulders confirms, I do think we're going to be heading over back towards this $550, $540 Ethereum level. As you can see, at this level, confluence with the 0.618 fib. Just take that off for a little bit more clarity. But also, this level is a highly violent level. We can see that price just reacted. Boom, huge sell-off here. Support here, and huge, or not huge, but resistance here to a sell-off, right? And then also, if we take into consideration this previous price action, which we shouldn't give too much weight to, but this $550 level-ish did act as a pretty big support. As you can see, these huge wicks here, and price has just pretty much held this. So this $550 level, 570, right, I think is going to be a pretty big support and the target for this head and shoulders if it does confirm. So that's it for the technicals. Honestly, there aren't really too many altcoin setups that I've been looking at recently. So pretty slow market. You don't need to just be taking so many trades. I don't see anything that I currently like, so I'm just in that Bitcoin trade right now. So moving on to the news, this is pretty much Consensus 2018 wrap up. Honestly, I don't think, from what I've read, and I watched a little bit of the Consensus live stream, nothing really beneficial came out from it. No major news. I mean, besides the whole Gemini or Zcash being Zcash being traded on Gemini, and right, Gemini becoming SEC regulated for Zcash, however you want to put it. That was honestly probably the biggest piece of news that, drove Zcash up like 50%. But other than that, right, I talked about last video how the whole consensus pump didn't really go through, right? Everyone was saying, oh man, consensus 2018, prices are going to go crazy. Didn't really happen that way. And judging by the recaps that I've read about the event, not really much was announced per se. The big news was just people in general saying they were for Bitcoin. Like I think the FedEx, some guy to do with FedEx. Oh yeah, and Lambos obviously. FedEx CEO, right? Blockchain is the next big disruption, and then we also had the Federal Reserve Chair of St. Louis, I believe. A little bit more skeptical about Bitcoin because of its, volatility, stuff like that. But I just felt it was just mostly people giving, crazy price predictions about it, and nothing really substantial came out of this, at least. And then we also just have the regular people, such as, I think, the CEO of Alibaba, talking some negative stuff about Bitcoin, as well as I think, what was it, a trader, a high volatility trader from the stock market or something like that. And we're just hearing kind of the same thread over and over again, right? Certain people calling blockchain the next big thing, right? The big disruption. Other people, Bitcoin's a scam, Bitcoin's this, has no value. So in terms of the news, I think or the headlines in general, were pretty much at a stagnant point, right? In terms of the general sentiment, I think that's stagnant as well. I don't think people are just crazy bullish or crazy bearish. I remember about a month ago, a lot of people were calling for 3K. I was even thinking about 3K. But as you can see, price didn't reach there, and we had a little rebound. Now we're bearish again. So sentiment is kind of just at that uncertain level. So yeah, the last bit of news is Ethereum futures potentially, right? So the CME group basically launched a price index and a benchmark price for Ethereum, kind of like they did for Bitcoin right before they launched Bitcoin futures. I know a lot of people are speculating Ethereum futures are on the horizon, and people are just super bullish about it. I'm taking more of a cautious approach because typically when futures or a futures market is established for some type of commodity or whatever, obviously in the case of Bitcoin, right at the height of Bitcoin at 20K, futures launched and the price dropped by half, right? And historically speaking, futures does cause the price of, whatever commodity or asset to drop. Same thing happened with gold and pretty much any other asset, as I said, that you look at that a futures market was instituted for. So not necessarily too excited about this if you're just, trading based off of what happens historically with futures, but nothing's certain, right? They just say that they're gauging client interest. It's just the fact that they launched this price index and kind of benchmark, which I believe they're using Kraken and another exchange, I forgot which one, to get those prices. It's just similar to what happened with Bitcoin, but who knows? Institutional money getting into futures and stuff like that isn't necessarily what we want right, for cryptocurrency, because at the end of the day, futures trading has no impact on crypto prices. It doesn't affect the supply and demand of the coins. And these are also cash settled futures, not crypto settled futures, right? Well, presumably they'll be, right, because the Bitcoin futures are cash settled, not Bitcoin settled. So I assume the same thing would be happening with Ethereum. So it would have no effect really on the actual supply and demand of Ethereum, right? Obviously, futures typically can be used for gauging the price of Ethereum or whatever commodity, right? You learn that in microeconomics, but we'll see how things turns out. Nothing's set in stone. This is just speculation, but interesting piece of news nonetheless to keep you guys updated on what's going on. So yeah. So we go into the weekend. Just going to keep monitoring my trade. And honestly, I've just been hitting the books and learning as much about trading as I can to, get better at it. I'm having a blast doing it. Takes a lot of work, but I'm definitely enjoying it. I'm enjoying doing these podcast series. Hopefully, I will be, getting a little bit more structure to them and stuff like that. So, yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Hit that like button, subscribe. Coming out with daily content Monday through Friday. So, yep, I will see you guys on Monday. Peace out.